You ever get those pesky bugs, the ones that always seem to find a way into your garden?
Oh, tell me about it.
Makes you wonder about the stuff people use to keep them in check, right?
You right.
So, today we're diving deep into the world of a pesticide mixer.
Interesting.
And it's not as simple as it sounds, believe me.
I bet.
We're talking serious science, real skill. Luckily, we've got this RoleCatcher guide to walk us through it. So, what's the first thing that jumps out at you from the RoleCatcher guide?
Well, the precision involved is mind-blowing, honestly. You're dealing with raw chemicals, right?
Right.
To make pesticides, fungicides, herbicides.
The whole shebang.
And even a tiny error, like a fraction of % off,
Oh, wow.
could be disastrous.
Wow.
Imagine a farmer, their entire crop
Wiped out.
gone. Because of, like, a tiny miscalculation, that's the kind of pressure these guys deal with.
Intense. Talk about high stakes. So it's not like my baking, where a flat cake is the worst-case scenario. Huh.
Not quite.
What kind of knowledge do you need? I mean, to make sure those mixes are spot on.
You need a rock-solid understanding of chemistry, especially how different chemicals react with each other, the dangers involved.
Right.
And then there's the whole safety aspect, of course. You're dealing with dangerous stuff if it's not handled right.
Of course, you can't just be like, oh, whatever with this stuff.
Oh, way. This is industrial grade.
Serious business.
And it's not just about you. You're protecting everyone handling those pesticides, even the environment.
Makes sense. So we've got chemistry, safety. What about quality control? That's a whole other thing.
Absolutely. It's massive in this role. We're talking constant testing,
Wow.
analyzing samples to make sure everything's up to standard, strict standards.
I bet. It's like baking a cake, but with,
With a dash of danger.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not all just like practical mixing, is it? RoleCatcher mentioned something about staying updated.
Yeah. The industry's always evolving, new chemicals, technologies, regulations even.
Wow.
You got to be on top of it.
So no resting on your laurels in this job.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
It's a career that keeps you engaged, always learning.
And that probably leads to some interesting career paths, right? Speaking of, RoleCatcher outlined a typical progression from entry level all the way up.
Yeah, it usually starts with an assistant role, lots of learning the ropes, shadowing the experienced mixers,
Gotcha.
really getting those safety protocols down.
And I imagine attention to detail is like everything at that stage.
Absolutely. One wrong move.
And disaster.
You're proving you can follow instructions, maintain those high standards. Then you might move up to junior pesticide mixer.
Okay, so you've paid your dues, you've got the basics down. What does a junior pesticide mixer actually do?
More autonomy. You're operating machinery independently, handling more of the mixing process yourself.
Wow, so you're really in the thick of it.
You might even start troubleshooting equipment, doing quality control checks, maybe even training newer team members.
So you become the mentor, passing on the wisdom.
Exactly. And then when you reach the peak, the senior pesticide mixer level.
Okay, paint me a picture. What's their day-to-day like?
Leadership. Overseeing entire operations. Making sure everything runs like clockwork. You might be developing new procedures, training junior staff, even collaborating with the research and development team.
Wow, so you could go from mixing chemicals to potentially inventing them.
Exactly.
What's fascinating is how much this role evolves. You're not just doing the same repetitive tasks year after year.
Absolutely not.
And that ties into the job market outlook, which RoleCatcher highlighted as very promising. But we'll dive into that right after this quick break. So before the break, we were about to jump into the job market. What's the outlook for aspiring pesticide mixers out there?
Honestly, the demand for pesticides isn't going away anytime soon. Agriculture depends on it.
To keep those crops healthy, right?
Exactly, to keep those yields up. And it's not just veggies. Think pest control in cities, even industrial uses. All of that means a pretty steady need for skilled pesticide mixers.
So this isn't some, niche career path that's about to vanish.
Not at all. In fact, RoleCatcher actually mentioned growth in the next decade.
Wow, that's reassuring.
Right. Job security is always a good thing.
Okay, but let's be real for a sec. It can't all be sunshine and roses.
Of course not.
What are the downsides here?
Yeah.
The not-so-glamorous parts.
Well, you are working with hazardous chemicals. Let's be upfront about that. And even with all the safety measures in place, there's always some risk, right? And it's not exactly a walk in the park physically either. You're on your feet a lot, lifting heavy stuff, operating machinery.
Yeah, not a desk job. So you got to be pretty tough.
You got to be able to handle it, that's for sure.
What about the hours? Is it a typical 9 to 5 or is it all over the place?
It can be demanding, yeah. Especially during peak seasons. You might have long hours, weekend work even, to meet those deadlines.
Right, so you got to be flexible.
Flexibility is key.
Makes sense. Speaking of things to consider, what about actually landing one of these jobs? What's the interview like for a pesticide mixer hopeful?
Right.
RoleCatcher had a whole section on interview prep, questions to expect. What kind of things should people be ready for?
Well, it's not about tricking anyone, but they want to see if you can handle the pressure.
I bet.
A big one is, how do you ensure accuracy when you're measuring and mixing those pesticides?
Of course. They don't want someone just winging it.
Exactly. These are powerful substances.
What's another one that might come up?
Have you ever had to deviate from the standard mixing procedure?
Oh,
How did you handle it? Oh, they want to know you can think on your feet.
Because things don't always go to plan, right?
Exactly. That's where experience comes in.
And RoleCatcher, I have to say, they're amazing. That database of alternative job titles they have is so helpful.
Right. It's pretty cool.
Did any of those stand out to you?
Yeah, a few. Feed and fertilizer mixer sounds interesting.
Ooh, niche.
Right. Very specific. And then there's tendinsecticide mixer. Sounds very hands-on.
I love that they have all these options. It's like choosing your own path. You can focus on certain products, industries even.
Totally. And some of those job titles, let's be honest, they sound really impressive on a resume.
Imagine telling people, I'm a monitor of environmental parameters.
Right. Sounds important.
And it speaks to that growing focus on environmental responsibility we're seeing, which is a perfect segue into our next topic.
Perfect.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to pesticides, their environmental impact. Everyone's more aware of how fragile our ecosystems are. So how does that play into a pesticide mixer's role?
It's huge. It's not just about protecting crops anymore. It's about doing it in a way that minimizes harm to the environment, to human health even.
Finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Effective but responsible. How's that actually play out in the real world?
Well, sustainable practices are becoming more and more common. This could mean biopesticides, for instance.
What are those?
They're derived from natural sources, things like plants or bacteria even.
Hold on. So instead of harsh chemicals, we're talking like biodegradable stuff.
Yeah. Safer for beneficial insects, for wildlife in general.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So instead of fighting against nature, it's more like giving it a helping hand.
Exactly.
What else is changing in the world of pest control?
Integrated pest management is becoming more popular. It's a broader approach using different techniques to control pests.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this integrated pest management.
Think crop rotation to disrupt pest life cycles, introducing natural predators, even using those biopesticides we talked about, but only as a last resort.
So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
But where does that leave the pesticide mixer? Are they still relevant in this new world of, integrated pest management and all that?
More than ever. It just means they need to understand more than just chemicals. They need to get ecological principles, pest life cycles, the impact of different control methods.
So they're not just mixing, they're strategizing.
Exactly. They become problem solvers in the world of pest management.
Wow, so there's a whole other layer to it now.
Absolutely. It's not just a job, it's about contributing to something bigger.
I love that. But we've talked a lot about the skills needed for the job, the knowledge. What about the person doing it? What kind of person thrives in this kind of role?
That's a great question.
It's really making me think about the kind of person who'd be great at this.
Well, attention to detail is huge. I mean, with all those chemicals, the potential for problems.
You can't just be like slapdash about it. Right?
Exactly. You need to be methodical, super careful, can't cut corners.
So it's like that person with a perfectly organized spice rack, right? Everything in its place.
That's the one. But it's more than just that. You also need a strong sense of responsibility. You're dealing with stuff that can really impact the environment, people's health even.
You can't take that lightly.
Exactly. No room for carelessness with those safety protocols. And on top of that, the field is always changing, so you got to be willing to learn and adapt.
Keep up with the times.
New technologies come out, old ways of doing things become outdated. The pesticide mixer of the future, they're going to be a mix of scientific know-how and that ability to just roll with it.
I love that. It's not just about what you know, it's about being open to new things.
Exactly.
It sounds like such a cool fit for someone who loves science but also cares about the environment.
Absolutely.
And speaking of the future, we've talked about all this demand for food, sustainable solutions, all that. How do you see the role changing to meet those needs? What's coming next for pesticide mixers?
Oh, man, that's the big question, right? As we move towards those sustainable practices we keep talking about, we're going to need pesticide mixers who are more than just technicians. They need to be innovators, the ones coming up with those eco-friendly
So
solutions.
not just following instructions, but coming up with a whole new thing.
Exactly. Figuring out how to make those solutions safe, how to make enough of them. We might even see them using totally new ingredients, stuff we can't even imagine right now.
That's so exciting. It's like being a chef, but instead of a new dish, it's a biopesticide that could change everything.
Exactly. And that's huge. The future of food, the environment even. It could all depend on the creativity of these guys. They're kind of like the unsung heroes of a greener world.
I love that. Unsung heroes. And speaking of heroes, we got to give it up for RoleCatcher.
Here, here.
Their insights into this career path, the whole thing, it's been amazing. So helpful.
I agree. They're really doing great work making this kind of information accessible. It's so important.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of the pesticide mixer.
I had a blast.
Me too. And for anyone listening, remember, whether you geek out over chemistry, you want to make a difference for the planet, or you just like the idea of a job that keeps you on your toes, this could be the career for you. So keep those brains buzzing. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.